Welcome to the Red Pill Sports and Entertainment Show. I am your host, Albert Apache, and as usual, brought to you by Open Source, Self-Defense, Fitness, and Grappling. Okay, guys, so this show, we're going to go ahead and try and turn and burn. We're going to get into it. So we're going to talk about the UFC on ABC fight card that happened this past Saturday, some of the interesting fights, and then we're going to talk about some big news coming out about Barata. Okay, Barata Farias, the BJJ instructor for Gracie Baja, who was accused of rape in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He was also a coach at Jackson Winklejohn. He was essentially had all charges dismissed. Evidence is basically showing that he couldn't be charged. So we're going to take a look at those two stories and get into it. Remember, please like, subscribe, and comment down below if there's anything you're upset about or anything that you disagree with me on, or just to say, hey, what's up, man? All right, man, with no further ado, let's go ahead and get into the show. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into this segment. So UFC Fight Night, UFC on ABC, was this past Saturday, April 10th. It was actually an afternoon card, which is kind of cool because the UFC had the afternoon all to itself. Wasn't competing with any of the other big three sports. So pretty cool to check that out. There was actually going to be an NBA game later that evening during prime time. So it'd be interesting to look at maybe later on this week. I'll try and pull the data, see if the UFC drew as well as the NBA, because that would be very telling, because we know the NBA has been on a downturn ever since the go woke, go broke philosophy that they've adopted. All that being said, Vettori versus Holland is a pretty decent card for a free TV card. I mean, UFC, Dana White, you can say all you want about him. I'm not necessarily a Dana White fan, but you got to give it up to him. The guy brings value to the fans when he puts together a card. Let's go ahead and take a look and see what happened. So just really quick, we'll look at what happened in the card. Of course, starting with the main event, Vettori beats Holland, Allen beats Yusuf, Julian Marquez beat Sam Alvey. This went a little bit different than I thought it was going to go. Now it says that Marquez won by submission. That being said, if you watch the fight, the reason why Marquez got a submission was because he absolutely rocked Sam Alvey. He actually rocked him a number of times in the first round, rocked him again in the second round. Alvey just kind of went for a survival takedown. Of course, he was dazed, confused, so it was very, very sloppy, and Marquez just kind of spun around to the back and got kind of a hybrid kind of rear naked choke that was, not completely textbook, but it worked. It put him out. I mean, Alves was literally choked out. And then the last one we're going to talk about that was on the card was Mackenzie Dern versus Nina Nunes. Dern armbars Nunes with, seconds left in the fight. This was a really, really coming out type party for Mackenzie Dern. Mackenzie Dern, ranked number 11 going into the fight. Nunes, ranked number 5. Mackenzie's striking. This is what was so impressive to me watching the fight, is that her striking is continuing to progress. In her first couple of fights, I was really worried because it didn't look like her striking was progressing. Her last fight, her striking looked much better, but I really didn't expect it to get very much better. I mean, when I say very much better, I didn't think there would be any marked improvements in it from the last fight to this fight. And there's always that kind of worry when it comes to a jiu-jitsu fighter that one of two things happens. Either they get super in love with their striking and then they want to become a knockout artist, or the other fear is that they don't throw with enough intention. They just touch to kind of point you up, and that's a counterable style, right? It's a little bit easier to counter that style because you don't have to necessarily worry about getting knocked out. Mackenzie Dern's striking is developing on a very good pace. Her striking looked very good. The best part about it was she threw with intention. She was throwing heavy, she was throwing hard, and that's important. That's very, very important, because that made Nunes have to respect the fact that, hey, if I stand with her, she's much more technical than she was before, so I can't just outclass her on my feet, and therefore one of these big strikes might land. That allowed Mackenzie to close the distance. That's what led to the clinch and Mackenzie getting her to the ground. And then once it was on the ground, of course, that was all she wrote. I mean, Mackenzie, what can you say? World class Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, amazing on the ground. Literally got this submission with seconds left on the clock. This says time is 4:48. I want to say that that is not the official time. I could have sworn that the clapper went off and then Mackenzie got the submission. So hats off to Mackenzie Dern. She looks really, really good. She did talk a little bit about what she wanted next and going up into, you know, possibly the top 5, but she definitely wants somebody in the top 10. I think that that's absolutely correct. She has to face somebody in the top 10 next. Fights I would like to see. Maybe Claudia Gadelha or maybe Michelle Waterson. I think these two girls offer very good matchups for Mackenzie, and they offer very good matchups for the fan, and I think they're good matchups for the opponent as well. It tells us a lot about where each one of those pieces is at, right? It helps bring in the fans, the diehards, because the diehards are going to know who Mackenzie Dern is, especially those that come from the jiu-jitsu community. They're going to really want to see where Mackenzie is versus a higher level fighter such as, you know, and somebody who has a more well-rounded game such as Michelle Waterson or Claudia Gadelha, right? They're going to want to see that. On top of that, that also shows us Michelle Waterson, Claudia Gadelha, one of those two, are they still in the upper echelon and able to hold off these younger or up-and-coming fighters that are in the ranks, right? Younger, when I say younger, I don't always mean that they're younger by actual age, but they're younger in the sport, right? So are they still able to hold these guys off and continue to be in that more upper echelon set of fighters? Okay, so I think that this is a really good matchup. And of course, Claudia Gadelha and Michelle Waterson both have a amazing casual fan following. So not only do those girls have the diehard fans that know that they're actual good fighters and actually, you know what kind of skill they come and what kind of skill they bring, right? But because I'm just going to be honest and put it out there, guys, because this is a Red Pill show, but because they are attractive and they do play into their femininity and they use that as part of their marketing, they have a ton of casuals that pretty much follow their career simply because they're attractive and they don't know anything about fighting, right? So they're going to have a ton of casual fans, and that's good for Mackenzie. And it's also good for them because, like I said, those diehards then get exposed to seeing these girls as well and following them, and it legitimizes, let's say, a Michelle Waterson. If Michelle Waterson is taken to the ground and her jiu-jitsu holds up and she's able to get back to her feet, the legitimacy that lends to her from the diehard fans, not the diehard fans who don't already respect her, right? But it is much different rolling jiu-jitsu against somebody who is not a BJJ world-class, level champion, and then rolling jiu-jitsu against somebody who is an MMA artist. Those who roll jiu-jitsu understand what I mean. Those who probably don't understand what I mean. Those who have only rolled, submission grappling, if you will, or no-gi grappling in an MMA context probably don't quite understand what I mean. There's a certain level of smoothness and technicality that generally comes with a BJJ world champion level grappler versus a very good grappler, no-gi grappler from MMA. It's just a little bit different thing. So it would really prop up Michelle Waterson's career, in my personal opinion. That's who I think I would like to see Mackenzie fight next, or Claudia Gadelha, if they could kind of somehow work out the schedule to get one of those girls. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. Next, let's talk a little bit about the main event before we move on, and Kevin Holland issuing a statement after Marvin Vettori defeats him. And essentially, if you didn't watch this fight, this was almost like a replay of Kevin Holland getting beat by Derek Brunson. Okay. Vettori basically beat him up for 5 rounds once he realized that Kevin Holland didn't have anything to offer on the ground. It's a bit disappointing because I do really like Kevin Holland. I really want to be a fan of his. It's just I don't want to be disappointed, and particularly after watching these last 2 fights, I'm very scared of being disappointed. Kevin Holland is an amazing striker. His striking game is very good. Let me tell you that for the first minute to 2 minutes of the fight, it looked like Kevin Holland might pull out the upset via knockout or TKO. His striking was super crisp. He was so fast, he was so long, and he was piecing up Vettori. That's facts. And he just wasn't there when Vettori was trying to counter back. He came out with the striking game plan that was extremely smart, knowing that Vettori likes to counter, particularly with a boxing style. And so Holland was poking, prodding, throwing snappy kicks, both to his legs and to his body, to inside leg kick, outside leg kicks, calf kicks, front snap kicks a la John Jones to the knee, front snap kicks a la Anderson Silva to the body. It looked like Kevin, and then when he was throwing his hands, he was throwing from a very good kickboxing distance to where the kick would close the distance, or he would slide into position using really good footwork and land lightning quick hands and then step out and get away. Looked fantastic. Really looked like Kevin Holland was going to get the upset. After a minute, Vettori realized that he was going to have to close that distance, that he could not stay in that kickboxing style distance. So he closed that distance and got into a more dirty boxing kind of distance and started to clinch with Holland. That seemed to be when the light went on for Vettori, and he realized that, hey man, I think I'm stronger than this guy. And he kept him there, got a takedown, controlled the rest of the round, did some ground and pound. It did not look good. Pretty much it was rinse and repeat for the next 4 rounds. Okay. Now, all that being said, this was a worse beating or defeat than the defeat that he suffered, Kevin Holland that is, to Brunson. Why? Marvin Vettori did a whole lot more damage. Okay, he did a whole lot more damage while he was in mount. He didn't just control Holland and do pitter patter. He was throwing with a little bit more intention. So, one of the things that I'm worried about is that Kevin Holland did reply, did give a statement after his loss. And it almost seems like he's taking this like a joke, that he's lost 2 fights in a row, and that essentially there's now a blueprint out to beat Kevin Holland. couple of things that are concerning. You watch Kevin Holland, he has no awareness in the clinch of what his opponent is doing. He has no awareness of what grips they have. Do they have underhooks? Do they have overhooks? Are they connecting their hands behind me? If their hands are connected, are they above my waist? Are they below my waist? Are they below my hips? Are they above my hips? It seems as though he has no real concept of where they are grabbing and what his opponent is doing within the clinch. Next, his takedown defense was not very good at all. I mean, some of the takedowns that Holland got, that Vettori got on Holland were not technical at all. It was almost like he grabbed a hold of his hips, he sucked his hips, and then he just spun him around onto the ground. Spun him away from the cage and onto the ground. It was not very technical at all. Technical in the sense that, hey, I sucked in your hips and I took your hips away, but, not something that was tricky, not something that was like, oh my gosh, that was, a technique that I'd really like to add to my arsenal, right? It was nothing like that. Next, his escapability once he hit the ground. I don't know this to be a fact. I'm only saying what I saw on the UFC broadcast. They say that Kevin Holland is a BJJ Black Belt. If that's the case, I really feel like maybe he needs to reach out and start training with different BJJ partners. And the reason why I say that is whoever he trains with is allowing Kevin Holland to have the mentality that being on the ground is okay, accepting the bottom position is okay, that escapability is not very important. You did not see him use his jiu-jitsu in such a way to try to escape, and what I mean by that is a lot of guys in the MMA community, they use their jiu-jitsu in a way that either threatens submissions or that allows them to escape. Those that use it to allow to escape like to get to like a half guard and go to like a underhook and try to shuck to like either take the back or get into a dogfight position so that they can scramble to their feet, or they'll use it to get in butterfly hooks, elevate the hips, kind of push their opponent off of them away, get that weight off of their own hips so that they can then scoop back, frame, and technical stand up into back onto their feet. Kevin Holland didn't seem to be urgent about any of that. There was like zero urgency about escapability. It didn't seem like he had any escapability from his back, and that tends to be something that's a mentality thing, right? Also, his ground game from the back was not very attacking. I didn't see him throw up, make angles. I didn't see him throw up any arm bars, any triangles. I didn't see him try to make angles to set up any of those things, and they were there. I mean, I'm not going to say that he could have for sure finished the fight, but I think that there was opportunities there that could have led to him getting back to his feet. Now, was that because he took this fight on short notice and he was a bit exhausted already? Because he did hit a really beautiful over-the-top sweep in that round one, and I thought it was something we might see a little bit more of. But we never saw like another major sweep attempt the whole rest of the fight. So it was really disappointing to see Kevin Holland just kind of accept being on the ground, not have escapability, not be threatening off of his back. The most threatening Kevin Holland looked on his back was when he was throwing up kicks at Vettori and trying to hit him in the face. And I think that was the most effective, most threatening his guard was in the entire fight. Kevin Holland only escaped when he was able to use the cage to get to the cage, and then use the cage to kind of wall walk and do things like that to get to his feet. So all in all, it's a little bit disappointing, because here's the thing, striking wise, okay, I really feel like Kevin Holland is a bad matchup for Israel Adesanya. I really believe that. I believe that if somehow Kevin Holland found his way into a championship fight with Izzy in the next month, or let's say the next fight that Izzy came up, let's say Kevin Holland took the fight on short notice, I think that he presents, striking wise, a lot of problems for Israel Adesanya. Why? Because he's long and he's quick and he strikes in a way that maximizes his range and maximizes his tools. I also think he hits much harder than Israel Adesanya. He does not need to necessarily be precise to rock you the way that Israel Adesanya needs. Okay? He also knows how to fight and be the initiator. He doesn't have to be a counterpuncher, while he does counterpunch very, very well. So I think he presents a lot of problems on the feet for Israel Adesanya. All that being said, I do not see him making it into a title shot unless he fixes this part of his game. And all in all, he's very athletic, so I don't think that it has anything to do with his actual BJJ skills or his actual wrestling skills. It seems to be a mindset. And that's why I think that he may have to go train with somebody else when it comes to his grappling game. And not permanently, but just long enough to be exposed to and understand that, hey, I have to adopt a different mentality when I'm on the ground. I have to really fight to be on top of the fight. I have to really fight to escape. I have to really be threatening and have an active guard if I'm going to play this closed guard or half guard game, because that's pretty much the game that Kevin Holland played. He didn't go to butterfly, right? He didn't look to snatch a leg really for any leg locks or anything like that. So he wasn't trying to invert or peel away a leg. So if you're going to play that game, you got to be pretty active with that game. You got to be active so that it really makes the other guy think about what's going on and scared to posture and do damage, because they're not able to posture and get any kind of leverage on the punches that they're throwing. Maybe he might, even with his body style, he may even want to go spend some time with El Kukui and pick up some of that rubber guard style and those nasty elbows that Tony Ferguson throws. But there's something's got to change in his ground game for him to reach his full potential, because I really think that striking wise, he's a nightmare matchup for a lot of guys. And he is, let's be real, he is a little light in the ass. So even being a little bit light for the division, he is still nasty on the feet. Anyhow, that's what I got on him. I really hope that Holland fixes his issue. Good luck to Vettori. He says he wants another shot at Israel Adesanya. They fought before. I don't know that this fight showed me he's ready for Israel Adesanya, but hey, if he thinks he can do it, I could see that he could create some problems. But again, Izzy has much better takedown defense than Kevin Holland, I think he's also a little bit better with understanding what a guy wants to do with him when he's up against the cage. So I think it'd be a lot tougher fight. But let's go ahead and move on. Well, I guess I'm supposed to allow ads to just come flowing into my screen here, guys. Mike Perry loses again. So this puts Mike Perry at 3-8 for the last 11 fights. He now has a losing record within the UFC and one fight left on his contract. Now, I'm a Mike Perry fan in the sense that I really like to tune in anytime Mike Perry fights, because I know what you're going to get, right? We're going to get a tough guy who's going to want to throw punches, who's going to want to stand, who's going to want to knock a guy out. That's fun to watch, okay? Super fun to watch. It's exciting to watch. I believe Mike Perry is probably a fan favorite. That being said, Mike Perry got beat up. He absolutely got beat up. And it was a little disappointing to watch Mike Perry get beat up and really have no answers, really have nothing to fall back on. If he can't find that big overhand or, a big winging, looping strike, a knockout strike, Mike Perry really has nothing else in his skill set to fall back on at this point in time. And that's really, really disappointing as a fan. Now, he came out and he made a comment via, I believe it was Twitter or Instagram, and he said, I used to be great. I don't know what happened. He said a couple other things about, having one more fight on his contract and doing anything he had to do to provide for his family. Well, I think one of those things that Mike Perry is going to have to do is take the rose-colored glasses off and stop listening to yes men. Because I don't know who or why Mike Perry thinks he was ever great, okay? And maybe I'm just misunderstanding his use of the word or his definition of great. But Mike Perry is not, in my opinion, what I would consider a great UFC fighter. Entertaining, absolutely. Exciting, yes. Fan favorite, absolutely. Most feared knockout artist in his division. You could even give that to him. Absolutely. Right? But a great fighter, I just, no. And so whomever is affirming to him that he is a great fighter, that he is a great MMA fighter, probably needs to be taken out of his corner, right? And he needs to get with somebody who is going to tell him the truth and tell him, look, Mike, you are a spectacular knockout artist. You have the most explosive overhand I've ever seen. You can cause major damage. Here's a problem. If somebody can account for that, you don't have a whole lot of other tricks in your bag. You're kind of a one-trick pony. So we need to put some more tools in your toolbox. And these are some things that could work for you, right? That's what needs to happen. Now, is that going to happen? I don't know. I hope so. What I really see for Mike Perry, I hope the UFC does not release him. What I really see for Mike Perry, if he's really serious about doing whatever it takes to provide for his family, I could see him having another 2 to 5 years in the UFC if he were to accept a more gatekeeper type role, where essentially, he was keeping guys out of the division that just were not ready, keep him hovering around that number 13 to number 10 spot, where guys who are up and coming into the UFC, maybe a fight in, maybe their first fight, if they're a little bit more hyped, they got to take on Mike Perry, kind of a Chris Lieben kind of role, right? And making sure that these guys are game when they come into the UFC, and that they have an ability to game plan, even if they aren't the best striker, even if they don't have knockout power, even if they maybe don't have the strongest granite chin in the world, they understand how to game plan. This would be a really great role for Mike Perry, and he could totally make a journeyman's living that way. But if he wants to be great and he wants a title shot, the reality is that Mike Perry's going to have to get rid of some of the yes men that it seems that may be surrounding him right now. Because again, I don't know who's confirmed to him, who's, how would you say, essentially agreed with him that he was great, that's verified this with him, that he would say, I used to be great. No, Mike, you've always been exciting, you've always been super fun to watch, but you've never been a great fighter. That's an overstatement. But that's what I got, guys. It was a great card. I hope you guys liked it. I really enjoyed it. The Weasel did a breakdown on the Vittori Kevin Holland fight. If you're interested in the technical part, he does the breakdowns. I just don't have the time to do that kind of editing, but check it out. It's really, really good. And let's go ahead and wrap it up for this segment, and let's move on. Okay, fellas, let's go ahead and get into this segment. So it made a ton of news recently, and given everything that's going on with Deshaun Watson, I found it very interesting that this breaking story seems to not even be cracking the trending topics across social media in even the jiu-jitsu community. And it's interesting because the story trended even in national media for a small time when the allegations first came. So here we have in the Jiu-Jitsu Times, dated April 10th, prosecutors dismissed sexual assault charges against BJJ Black Belt Hafiel de Farias. So this is a BJJ Black Belt that teaches, or he used to teach anyway. Who knows what's going to happen to his career now. Taught at Gracie Baja in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Very accomplished black belt. He has a technique that is named after him, a shoulder lock, the Barata Plata. If you've never seen him, he's a really good, I mean, he's outstanding. He's a smaller guy, maybe about 5'7", maybe. Not a big guy. He did take a shot at the UFC via the Ultimate Fighter. So as we go ahead and we go through and we read the two charges of sexual penetration, criminal sexual penetration in the third degree against BJJ Black Belt and former tough contestant have been dismissed according to a court document sent to Jiu-Jitsu Times by Farias' attorney, Jason Bowles. So essentially, the prosecutor has dropped the charges. If you read here, it says, while probable cause exists at the time of arrest, additional investigation has revealed that at this time there exists an insufficient factual basis to meet the state's burden at trial. So we continue on. And pretty much the attorney goes on to explain that we represent Hafiel de Faritas Barata, a well-loved, very accomplished jiu-jitsu practitioner. To date, the public has received one-sided reports of sexual assault based on the word of the alleged victim and a video which no news agency or the public has seen. We have now watched the video. Let us be clear. These charges are false. The video proves that Mr. De Farias is innocent of a crime. We will present evidence that she invited Mr. De Farias over that morning in text, poured alcohol, and had liquid THC, and her actions and responses during the video reflect a completely sexual encounter. So here we have it. This is upsetting to me as a man because, again, people don't think that there is any damage done to the man when false allegations come forward, and why I am such an advocate for men when it comes to sexual allegations, that we have to wait and see what comes out in the investigation. What is the character of both parties, both the accused and the accuser? What is the evidence that sex even occurred, that there was any kind of sexual activity between these two individuals? What's the evidence? Next is the allegations. Where was there any consensual sex leading up to that, or sexual play leading up to that? Could there have been, is it a sexual assault case, or as many people like to conflate nowadays. Regret about a decision is not the same as being sexually assaulted. And that really upsets me because I have had friends and family members in the past who have been sexually assaulted in a very physical, violent way. And when a female tries to conflate her poor choices, her regret of having slept with somebody, as similar to the trauma as one of my family members, that's upsetting to me. But again, going back, I digress. This, people ask, what happens to the man? It's not a big deal. How come victim blaming, this, that, and the other? No, it's not victim blaming. This is exactly why. Clearly, what this lawyer said was absolutely true. The evidence did not support the charge. The evidence did not support the charge. A prosecutor doesn't drop a case like this. Okay, not when there's video evidence that the sexual act actually occurred. That's 90% of the prosecution. Okay, this means that the texting had to be of a sexual nature. Here we'll continue. Her statements to police also show that she had motives to bring these false charges. Mr. Farias willingly admits and is remorseful about making a terrible error in his marriage and towards his wife, but he absolutely innocent of any criminal sexual assault, and his family's name and reputation have been falsely maligned. We are asking everyone to reserve judgment until the evidence is presented in court. So they're not mentioning it here. Oh, here we go. Over the morning in text in Puerto Rico. Okay, so it does mention the text here. So essentially, what happened was that there was texting back and forth between these two. This must have come out. This must have set the precedent that there was some kind of sexual innuendo, if not outright sexual talk between the two, inferring or directly saying that they were going to have sex. And let's not be naive. Not be naive. If you're an adult and you're anywhere under the age of 50 and you're older than, let's say, 18, you've probably sexted with somebody, right? You've sexted with them. So all of that builds up to what is going on here. And again, this is upsetting to me that this made so much news across the nation, yet when the charges are dropped, it seems as though nobody is inclined to. Morality police will sit there and say, well, that's what he deserves because he cheated on his wife. Really? Cheating on your wife deserves that you lose your entire good reputation? That's ridiculous. That's utter ridiculousness. That is the standard that we want to set for somebody who did not commit a sexual assault but was accused of a sexual assault. That is a ridiculous standard. Okay, guys, that's all I got for this segment. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, please like, subscribe, comment down below, and remember, be practical, be purposeful, get fit with a purpose, guys.
Every dude who touched a boob or a booty getting me too. What you expect from the kids who went to Hooters after school? We're all triggered and defensive, we're all racist and we're sexist. We all grew up watching South Park. How are we offended? Now being fat is beautiful? Name a thing that you can't do? Jumping jacks, run a mile, live past 42? Man, it used to be cool to just flip a bird to the system, and now it's trendy to be triggered and pretend you're a victim. It's my race, it's my weight, it's because I'm a Christian. I hate the internet and anyone who has an opinion. And everybody angry if you say white. Okay, fine. Pass me the brush and I'll paint my face to the shades right. Let's talk about abortion. Sorry, tell me how this works. Bacteria is life on Mars, but a heartbeat isn't life on Earth? Weird. You're so stupid.